Thanks again for staying with me on the show, TMI. Beautiful Monday morning. We're actually counting up to the grand finale of the Miss ITV Hot Legs Beauty Pageant and Fashion on the Runway. Well, two events put together as one. For the beauty pageant, it's part of our corporate social responsibility as a media organization and to give young girls, young women the opportunity to use their beauty and their brains to make an impact in society, thereby discouraging human trafficking, all right? And then, of course, prostitution and illegal migration. These are key issues bedeviling us today. If people can just realize that they have an opportunity, they have a platform where they can put their intellect to work, put their beauty to work, just to change the fortunes of the society and give a good life to themselves. I'm sure all of the talks about human trafficking, legal migration, and prostitution will be drastically reduced. We can't eradicate it completely, but we can reduce it to the barest minimum where it's no longer at the front burner. As part of the discussions today, re-engineering Nigeria's development, looking at the roles of critical stakeholders to drive Nigeria's development. Of course, you remember that every now and then we talk about countries of the world that either gained independence with Nigeria or were at par with Nigeria in terms of development. You look at the likes of Singapore, the likes of Malaysia, Ghana in Africa, and several others, and you look at where they are today, they've far gone ahead of us in terms of socio-economic development. If these countries can get it right, why is it so difficult for us to get it right to make life more meaningful for the average Nigerian? That's the thrust of our discussions today. I'd like to thank very especially Ebonyi Idehe. Ebonyi Idehe is a politician, but is first an economist and a development expert. Idehe, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Sonny.
I also have with us in the studio Dr. Adrian Awekoy Davison. He's a politician, he's an author, he's also a public affairs commentator. Dr. Davison, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I've said here on several occasions, I mean, particularly when we had an interaction here, I said, you actually mentioned that nothing is new under the sun. If you want to fast track your development, just go to any country where you know they are succeeding. Adopt the model of governance and of government, and then you paste it wherever you want to paste it, and you see the same results. But we have adopted the presidential system of government for some years, for some time now. It looks like we're not there yet. How do you think we can re-engineer Nigeria's development to make the country work better for its citizens as it's currently obtainable in other clients, particularly those countries that we either gain independence at the same time, but just a few years back, we're at the same level in terms of development. They've far gone ahead of us.
Thank you, Sonny. You know, I've said it over time, several times, that the challenge we have is that we need to look at our leaders. We need to look at our leaders. We also need to look at the followers. The leaders need to lead, while the followers also need to follow. It's a two-way thing. When we talk about government, government is not aliens. Government is made up of Nigerians, just like you and myself. We also need to look at history. You see, politics plays a very major role in terms of enhancing those policies that would galvanize and ensure that socioeconomically the country would thrive, like other countries have also gone past where they were before independence and after independence. We need to model leaders. Growing up as a young man, we heard of the Awolowos, the Azikiwes. We heard of Ubemudia. If we come back home, we heard of Ambusali. They governed based on ideology. They had a vision, a goal. This is what we want to do. But guess what? These politicians that we have today, what legacy? Can you pinpoint any? You see, Awolowo came had an ideology, talked about free education. Do you know people that have benefited from that free education today? Ali came, the same thing. I benefited from it. I believe you benefited from it. Have you seen Ali having a house in London? How many houses does Ali have in Edo State? What was his security vote? What kind of vehicles was he using in his entourage as at that time? Is it not in Nigeria? Is it not the same Nigeria? Or has Nigeria changed? Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Our government, they're not accountable. First and foremost, the leader must have a vision. This is what I want this country to be. He will read it out, then the followers would follow. And how do you ensure that? The rule of law. And you must build institutions. You don't individualize institutions. I'll give you an example. Our revered Oba, when he ascended the throne 2 years ago, he had a clear-cut vision. The people that were selling lands, what did he do? He went to the governor. There was a bill that was passed to that effect. There was not a law abolishing what? CDA. Why? Because people were selling lands. You sell a particular plot of land to three persons. Would that enhance development? No. But today, you can see people come, they buy their lands, they build their houses, and that enhances development.
So this is about clear-cut vision.
It's clear-cut, very clear-cut. But today you have situations whereby you go to the House of Assembly, people even vote against their own autonomy. So you need to start looking at who are the kind of leaders we elect into political positions. They are supposed to be serving us, but it has turned around that we are not the ones now serving them. So it's a function of, one, getting the right leaders, then two, educating the followers, because the leaders also have a role to play. The followers, who are the followers, also have a role to play. Then you now look at the process, how do we now get the leaders politically? I think we'll get to that.
Okay, let me pause you there. Dr. Davidson, many thanks for joining us again.
Yes.
The American presidential system of government is what we practice here, supposedly. But some say what we currently have, in terms of practice, not exactly what obtains in the U.S. I don't know what your thoughts are along those lines.
Well, let's start from the history of this country. When this country first gained independence back in the 1960, and a republic in 1963, they established the parliamentary system of government. And after the coup and everything, and when they had very little success with that, they switched to the presidential system of government. And with that, of course, you have the executive president as well. And with that comes checks and balances, which has been lacking in this present system of government, which will be practicing since the 1999 Constitution was drafted. And what has happened is this, in this present situation, with this present platform in this country, the president here in this country tend to have too much power compared to what obtains in the U.S. The U.S. government, for example, the U.S. president, for example, has executive power, and has often used it, will often use it, and we often use to make appointments and to maybe pardon some friends and stuff. But when it comes to really governance, the president cannot do anything without Congress. Without Congress, like look at the recent appointment of Judge Kavanaugh in the U.S., which was well publicized. You saw what happened. We had 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats. And there had to be a great lobbying to make sure that equation played out, because they needed 51 to stand, because if there had been dissent, if there had been a few Republicans that had disagreed with that appointment would not have taken place. So to make it stick, they had to make sure they keep that 51 Republicans voting to appoint Judge Kavanaugh, who eventually became a Supreme Court judge, replacing Justice Kennedy. who retired. But having said that, but I'm just trying to illustrate how things can go.
Okay.
But if it had been in this country, that what happened in the U.S. would it have happened here? That justice would have been, the judge would have been appointed to the Supreme Court without even the House of Rep or the Senate even playing a major role. Now, economically, I asked a question earlier. You said, how has this country fared compared to the other countries that gain independence at the same time?
Yeah.
I would say not very well. When I was growing up in this country, there were roads that were motorable, there were public phones, and I was driving through Edo College Road the other day. The roads were all waterlogged, and you couldn't even pass through. When I was growing up, I grew up in that road. They were all tarred. They were beautiful roads. You could drive through them. It's like we are going backward and not forward. Other countries are moving forward. Again, we are moving backward. The reason is because we are not having what I would call a strong political stability. To have a strong economic stability, you need a good political stability. Because that's what we attract foreign investors. In any economy, in any economic situation, you need foreign investors to help promote the economy, because they are the ones who bring their companies down to the country that will help move the economy forward.
If you say we're not having
a strong,
stable political structure,
yes.
From 1999 to date, we've seen succession of civilian administration hand over to another civilian administration. Isn't that stability?
It is stability, but you are not having a firm structure that will create the kind of stability that we attract, that will create confidence. Because if you have a good political structure, strong structure, you will in turn have good leadership that will produce security in the country. Right now, I hate to say it, a lot of people would disagree with me, that I would hate to say that there is no strong security in this country. Security is an issue in this country. You have, like when we started this program earlier, you mentioned something about prostitutions, our young girls going abroad for prostitutions and stuff like that. That is because there is no gainful employment back here at home. If we have a strong economy, we have industries producing goods and employing people, our young girls will not be, we have no reason to go abroad, go through the Mediterranean Ocean and be dying in the sea, going through the Libyan desert and be getting frosted in the hot sun. That will not be taking place. But because we don't have a good political structure that will in turn produce a good economic structure that will of course create industries and good employment, we're having those issues. Look at the crime rate, for example. Who are those committing crime in the society? The youth, of course. You don't have any grown person going out there with guns, invading homes and committing burglaries. You have the young ones. You have graduates from college, from universities, not being able to get good jobs. And they are resorting to crime as the only means of livelihood. This shouldn't be. We should have a good economy that will produce good jobs for our youth, because our youth are the leaders of tomorrow.
Okay. Let me pause it out. I'll be back with you in a moment. Let me come to Idehem. Over the years, there have been policies, programs, policy initiative programs to deal with all these challenges that we have in the society, whether unemployment, whether security challenges, and what have you. What do you make of the impact of these policies in terms of achieving target results?
You see, on paper, the policies that we've had, beautiful policies, but when it comes to implementation, that is where the challenge is. You heard the Dasuki Gate stuff, where money was appropriated for them to buy weapons to fight this insurgency. It's no longer news to anybody. Monies were diverted for other purposes. And even if you dig further, you find out that even the equipment they even acquired are obsolete.
Well, you can't substantiate that. I mean, you don't have, you can't substantiate the fact that the equipment acquired were obsolete. How are they able to fight the war against insurgency if those equipments are obsolete? Maybe they are not enough, but to say they are obsolete, I'll disagree with you on that. Yes.
I worked in a bank for 15 years. When we talk about, we are Nigerians, we shouldn't deceive ourselves. We should come out and say the truth. we should say it the way it is. Do you understand? I'll give an example. In the year 2000, like I said before, China was a signatory to Millennium Development Goal. Nigeria was also a what? A signatory. China took that document, went to China, domesticated it. Nigeria took its own document, came to Nigeria to domesticate it. As a banker, I had accounts with local governments for MDG. What did they do? How much did they appropriate for a borehole? They'll tell you 10 million naira. You as an individual, do you sink a borehole for 10 million naira? The same people in the MDG, the same local government chairmen, they have a percentage out of it. Go to those boreholes today. Are they functional? I'm speaking with, this is what I've seen. It's not, you won't tell me. It's what I've seen. It's what I've experienced. Am I not a Nigerian? The chairman tomorrow, he lives there. What are the people? Are they not still suffering? 21st century. So these are the issues. Our government needs to be accountable. And when we say we are fighting corruption, we're not fighting corruption. If you want to fight corruption, look at how China is fighting corruption. Once they hear that you've taken part in any corrupt, what is the penalty? Death.
Well, people have criticized that, particularly in the Western world have criticized that.
Has China not grown? Have they not grown? But today you talk about, today you see somebody, today is in this political party, tomorrow he has cross-carpeted to the next political party. His case file, the witnesses, you can't see them anymore. You see, what we must realize is this. I belong to a political party. The first political party that I belong to is Nigeria. The other political parties is secondary. We are Nigerians. I can decamp from one political party A to political party B in less than 1 second. But can I decamp from being a Nigerian to being a Ghanaian? Or being a Nigerian to being an American?
Absolutely no.
Do you understand? We need to come back home and ask ourselves pertinent questions. What do we want? Secondly, the kind of leadership that we propel to govern us. Sorry to say, even with this hula baloo that is taking place now, when you look at, it's okay, 2 major political parties, do they have the credentials? In my opinion, no. They don't. But the system has so skewed us. By the time you bring a sheep and you bring a goat, we don't have a choice. We must choose between the sheep and the goat. Those are the areas we need to look at.
Well, we know sheep and goat don't rule human beings. So let's try and play all
Sonny,
that. Yeah,
Sonny,
I understand the point.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
You don't give what you don't have.
Absolutely.
As a banker, if you want to talk about the economy, I don't need to open any book. I will tell you how this economy will function.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a moment. Yes, Dr. Davison.
Well, what I wanted to point out is this.
Yes.
The Chinese system is, they may be growing. Right now, their growth rate, GDP growth rate is 6.5%. Of course, they slowed down a little bit. And of course, the U.S., as you know, is 4.1, and unemployment has trickled down to 3.7, which is good. Great.
Is good, yeah.
You know, those are beautiful things. But in terms of the way they govern,
Their process or the style
is the communist systems. You know, and even though they have a free market economy that is helping the economy, China has recently opened up. It's been a closed society it was a closed society for so long. They recently opened up, and of course, with the fall of the Soviet Union and the glasnost and the perestroika taking hold in USSR and of course Russia, bringing free economy, China also copied that and has been doing so well. But in terms of persecution, in terms of getting rid of those that don't agree with your policies, which Nigeria is going the right way. It should not go the way of China, because China is still backward. In every indication, China is still a developing economy. It is not, even though it has the second largest economy in the world, next to the United States, it is still a developing economy. It is not a developed economy to the status of the United States or even Japan, even though it has a fast-growing economy. But having said that, the Chinese way of getting rid of its political dissidents and stuff like that is backward and primitive. They have not come to the style of democracy that is practiced in America.
But
yes,
the question is it working for them? Is it producing the right results? Is the economy better? Is the quality of life better for the citizens?
But I'll tell you how things are getting done in China. What has helped China tremendously is the cheap labor market. And how has that helped China? Because most manufacturers in America, especially in America, they take their manufacturing companies to China to manufacture their goods because they are cheaper to manufacture in China. They use those sweatshops to manufacture those goods. And then those goods are later imported to the United States and sold. That's where Trump comes in, is introducing these tariffs to make sure that when those goods arrive in the United States that they are so exorbitant and that those manufacturers, those American manufacturers, will be unable to sell them. But the point I'm trying to make is this. The reason it's working for China is because of the cheap labor market. And with the way things are going in China, the average citizen, is moving up. And with that, the traditional cheap labor market is also improving, making it impossible. Like the iPhone I have in my pocket, this is an American product. But guess what? It's made in China by a Taiwanese company. Yeah. And that is what is helping China to grow because they are forcing.
Well, I also think that the population is also a major factor.
Sonny,
the 1.4, one second.
Yeah.
In China, the population is 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
And neighboring in India, down the street, is 1.3 billion. The population is helping, but they are suppressing the population, the voice, the opinion of those population. You can't say things that you can say, like we're talking now, we're talking about our country, we're talking about our presidency, we're talking about our election, we're talking about our campaign. You can't talk openly like this in China. You will be taken away by the Politburo, because that's how things are played in China.
Okay, let me push. Yeah,
they don't operate a democracy. Do you understand? They've looked at what suits them, and if you look at the per capita income, you see, for me, I look at traction. Traction in the sense that, one, do they have crime in China compared to Nigeria? No. Do they have kidnappings in China the way they have in Nigeria? No. Do they have is the unemployment rate as high as what you have in Nigeria?
No.
Is the population not higher? How did they get it right? Very simple. One, they curbed. It could be crude,
but it's working for them.
It's working for them. Education, they have it. Technology, they have it. Do they have oil? No. You might feel that, okay, it's cheap labor. Yes, every entrepreneur wants to produce his goods in a cheap way so he can maximize what? Profit.
Yeah.
If peradventure Nigeria was able to sort out its security issues, do we have the population? Yes. Do we have the land? Yes. Sort out your security issues, sort out your infrastructural issues in terms of power, which for donkey years they've been telling us stories. Sort those out. These investors, they will come to Nigeria. Our youths will be what? Employed. You know, when I came to this studio the other day, just the same way he came and said, this iPhone is an American product. Produced where? In China. If this Nokia is an American phone and also produced where? In Nigeria. Who will work there?
Nigerians.
Nigerians will work there. They will get stipends. But do Nigerians even have stipends now? Do they have even the stipends alone?
But real quick, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to point out this real quick, that you said education in China. Do you know the only daughter of Xi Jinping, the president of China, went to Harvard? If the education in China is so good, why send his only child, his daughter, to Harvard to go to school? Most Chinese students, the elite Chinese, send their children to the U.S. for education. And the majority of the students, foreign students coming from Asia in America, are mostly Chinese. That's because their educational system is not as good. And I haven't said that. And the Chinese have a history of manipulating their numbers. They don't give you accurate numbers. Like in the US, for example, you will see what the labor statistics is saying. It will tell you unemployment, how the unemployment rate is trickling down, how the economy is growing. Chinese, they manipulate their currency to make sure it, like what Trump was fighting the other day, not too long ago, was that the Chinese needed to raise the value of their currency so that the products that they ship out will equate with the products that are being sold in the Western world, because they are manipulating their system. The way you actually do your currency is to make sure it equates with your gross domestic product. Mm-hmm. If you are trying to manipulate it to where you can sell goods to foreign markets, you are actually working in the standard established by the international market. Okay. You see, that's another issue I want.
Okay, just wanted to quickly establish. Okay, you want to add something to that, because I just thought, okay, yeah, yeah.
I differ a little bit with that, because basically, is what we call free trade.
I get the point now.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because it's what you have that you give. If you look at the Americans, they also export food to China. So by the time, that's why you have the trade war. By the time Americans increase their tariffs in terms of the duties the Chinese pay for the goods that come into the US. Yeah. The Chinese also increase their tariffs. Yeah. So that's why you have the trade.
But don't forget, I wanted to ask a question. Where's Nigeria in this whole matrix of America, China? Because we've seen in recent times that there's so much interest from China in many African countries, including Nigeria.
What does it portend? It depends on what these governments, I know they are almost in Africa, Zimbabwe, Angola, and some other countries. It's good because they are giving out loans in single digits to these countries. Like as at Nigeria, for Nigeria, for example, now, the loans they are giving out, we are looking at loan to GDP, which is still about 20%. Okay. But the government of the day keeps talking about loan to GDP. It's supposed to be loan to revenue. What is our revenue that we are generating that we use to pay
the loan?
The loan.
Okay.
Then you now look at the situation by how much we pay as tax. Our tax rate is very, very low, 6%. The elites, how much do they pay? Do they even pay tax? Do the government, do they have the will to say, yes, I need to meet these elites, these leaders, these political leaders who have various companies? Do they really pay the tax? No, they don't.
Some of them, let's put it that way.
Most of them.
Okay, let me pause it. Let me get
So I want to say something.
If I ask the question, where is Nigeria in this matrix of
I will tell you
America, China trade? Yeah.
Okay, real quick. I'm going to do a quick comparison so you can see where I'm going here. See, if you look at the recent stuff going on with China and the U.S. about the tariffs and all that, the reason is because of the deficits. The U.S. trade, China's trade is, the U.S. is trading at a deficit with China, with Canada, with Mexico. That's why Trump is introducing these tariffs, to make sure that there is a level playing field. That way, they will not be having a deficit with China, with Mexico, and coming to Nigeria's situation. Yeah. What Trump did was that Trump got out of NAFTA, the North America Trade Agreement, which includes Mexico and Canada, of course. The reason Trump did that was because Trump felt that America was not getting the benefit of the trade with Canada and Mexico, and to do that, impose tariffs. That means if you want to trade with us, we have to make sure that we are on a level playing field. And with China, it was the same thing. That's why it got out of the Pacific Trade Agreement. But now, coming back home, if Nigeria can look at its trading partners and say, who are we running deficit with? Why can't we why can't we have a surplus? Why are we running deficits? If we look at our trading partners and the people we do business with and find ways to make sure we are getting enough money coming into the system, the economy will be going great. Now, let me look at the petroleum sector, where we are actually refining. Our refineries are dilapidated and they are hardly working. Meaning we are producing oil, yes. We are one of the leading oil producers in the world. Guess what? We send our oil overseas to refine, and then we buy back our own oil to sell and then the government subsidizes the oil, and that is sold at the petrol station. Why can't we have refineries to refine our oil and make oil cheap, instead of using our hard currencies to subsidize the oil, our oil that is re-imported back to the country? That's a waste of resources.
So are you against subsidy?
Yes.
Subsidizing our the oil import, our own oil in the first place that is sent out to be refined and purchased back into the country. I'm against that kind of subsidy. It doesn't help the economy. We are wasting resources. And that thing you have to look at again. The government is not going to do anything about this, because we have so many businessmen and women profiting from this, making tons of money from this kind of trade transactions. They don't want our country to have its own refineries, because if they do that, their own import companies that import oil, our own oil back into our country, will be out of business. That shouldn't be the case. Now, going back to the agricultural sector, of late, we've been importing food into this country. We need to
importing food or exporting food?
We are importing food into this country. Look at rice, tomatoes, and stuff. We need to refocus in the agro-based industries. Invest in these organizations so that we can produce more food. Give tools to our farmers. Give fertilizers to our farmers. That way, they can have pride in farming. People run away from farms because they feel there is no pride in farming. It shouldn't be the case. In the U.S., most farmers are millionaires. They are well off. Farming shouldn't be a disgraceful occupation. If we can introduce pride into farming, can bring pride into farming, and kind of encourage our youth to get into farming, produce the tools and the fertilizer they need, and bring some kind of security into agro-based industries, we will have surplus food. We even seen, before we had oil in this country, we were an agro-based economy, and we were doing very well. Why can't we go back to those days? Look at right now, the U.S. is producing 10.9 million barrels of oil a day, surpassing Russia. And the U.S. has, as of October this year, became #1 oil producer in the world at 10.9. Russia's 10.8 million barrels of oil a day. And what is that doing to countries? And there are other countries looking for alternative energy. In England, they are saying they're going to try to make sure most vehicles, majority of their vehicles, no longer use petroleum. What is it going to do to countries that depend solely on oil? So we need to look inward and find ways to make money in this country. We can't be depending on oil. We can't be squandering our wealth in resources that don't really have relevance to the economy.
All right, let's just take this discussion to a next level. The talks has also been in the lines that we need to restructure Nigeria for us to get it right. Because you talked about agriculture a while ago, and the feeling is that, well, if we restructure this country, development will be faster. And the thinking is that in the pre-colonial and even a larger part of the post-colonial era, Nigeria functioned along the lines of regional, which to a large extent, according to analysts, helped to foster healthy competition. How feasible is that under the current dispensation of our socio-political and economic development there?
Sonny, I laugh, because for me that's the present rhetoric that the politicians are using to also see how they can sway people and say restructuring. Well, restructuring is good when you look at, from history, when you look at the times past, when we had regions, there was healthy competition. Then we had the first TV station in Africa, in Ibadan. Enugu had their own, but if you look at, there was a healthy competition backed with an ideology of the leaders at that time. I'll give you an example. Today, you have a governor in a particular state. He wants to bring his in-law. It is not a bad idea. But
the in-law has a right, doesn't he?
He has a right.
Yeah.
Under the Constitution.
Yeah.
Anybody has a right to vie for a position. But we're not ripe for that. Now, every human being is a product of his or her own environment. You see, we need to, they say who wants to seek equity
must come with clean hands.
Mm-hmm. You see, we are too used to myself, my own. What do we even think about doing for the people? What do we think? What do we have in mind? Okay, what legacy? I've mentioned it before. Awolowo, Azikiwe, Ambusali, Ugbemudia, to mention a few. Amongst these present crops of politicians, leaders, I don't want to mention names. I don't want to ruffle feathers here. What legacy would they say over time that they've left? Some of them are dying. Which legacy would they say, I was so and so at a particular point in time? This is what the people who know me remember me for. None. They will only know them for negative things.
Some of them. But some of them also have very illustrious legacies that you can point to. Let's be factual. Many of them. There's no point mentioning names. Several of them have legacies that you can point to. Let's establish that fact. Yes.
If they had those legacies that we can point to, I don't think we'll be where we are today. If you want to start, let us mention them. We'll mention them, but...
No, this is not a platform for that. You know that.
If they had legacies...
But are you saying that restructuring can't take this country out of the woods?
Restructuring,
yes,
with all sense of sincerity. For me, if we had good leaders and good institutions, we won't be talking about restructuring. Because for Christ's sake, we are Nigerians. If a leader comes and says, okay, this is my agenda, we need to industrialize this country, then you have a blueprint. I told you about all the policies we had. Beautiful policies, but when it comes to implementation, who implements it? Is it the Chinese that comes to implement it here? It is you and I. The local government chairman, who is he? It's not my brother, it's not my sister. When it comes to that MDG, is it a Chinese that is manning MDG? Is it the Chinese that comes to tell you in terms of procurement that a borehole is 10 million naira when a borehole is done for... Who is the person that does all of that? Is it the Chinese? So if restructuring is coming tomorrow, and you say, okay, those states, you have so and so mineral or whatever, manage it. Is that not what you're talking about? Let's see how you can use it to galvanize and also empower your people.
Yeah.
These same people, if they don't have sincerity of purpose, will still be in the same quagmire that we are today. It now boils down to one: how do we elect our leaders?
Process of emergence of leaders.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we look?
Okay. I'll come back to you. Yes, Dr.
I think
Adrian.
what we lack in this country is amongst our leaders.
Patriots.
I asked a question relating to restructuring, because I remember before the 2015 election, it was a very topical issue. All right? And now we've gone past that. Some are bringing it up now. Some seldom talk about it. What are your thoughts, Dr. Adrian?
Well, restructuring, first to restructure, you have to restructure the mindset of the people. The former finance minister once said, talk about rebranding, which of course, if we can rebrand ourselves and get ourselves to where we can actually be patriotic to the things that matter. The former American president, JFK, once said, once told America and said, let's not think what Americans can do for you, but think of what you can do for America. If we have that sense of purpose, we can restructure the system to suit us. That will make our country a great country, greater than most countries. We are, like I said earlier in this program, or maybe in another program, I said, we need to move away from that underdeveloped status to a developing status. And maybe, God willing, we can get to become a developed country. That's far from the equation. But really, what we need to look at is to look inward as leaders. Like he talked about legacy, I agree with him. We need leaders that will think of legacies, not just a money grab philosophy, a money grabbing philosophy that, oh, let's go into office, make money, and live the populace, in penury. That should not be the case. Think about legacies. Most American presidents in other parts of the world, worry about legacies. How they're going to be remembered, what they're going to do for the society so that they can be remembered. That's what our leaders need to be thinking about. They need to be thinking about tomorrow, what the generation to come will think about how they led the country. Awolowo did well. Azikiwe, I was at Abuja the other day. I saw his name at the airport because they established good legacies. Our leaders of today need to think about that. They should take their mind away from always wanting to grab power. And the electorate need to also be rebranded, because right now, to get into office, you have to basically buy your way into office. That shouldn't be the case. The people need to invest their own interest in the people, not in their candidates and in their potential leaders. That way, these leaders can go into office with patriotic ideas on how to serve the people diligently. So that's how we need to first of all restructure the mindset of the electorate and then of the leaders.
Okay, in terms of restructuring that we talked about, restructuring the mindsets of the electorates and then the leaders, let's start with the electorates. How do we restructure the minds of the electorate, knowing fully well that when a fish is dried, you can't bend it anymore? And the same goes for the leaders.
You see, basically, for you to restructure the minds of the electorate, what the government needs to do is education. The major problem we have, or the major problem any country has that is not developing, that aspires to get to the developed nation, is when they are not paying emphasis on education. He talks about the GDP. He talks about this, he talks about that. He's talking about it because why he's educated. You don't need to be a banker to know what the GDP is, your gross domestic product. You don't need to be, if you are educated, you will know those little indices that would inform you to know what you can make your judgments with. Look at what the government invests on education. 5%, the highest. Before it was 3%. And world organizations have said for you to be a developing country, you must invest about 26% of your budget on education for over 20 years. Have we done that? No. You find out that even those that say that they are educated, sorry to say, they are illiterates. Because if you say you are educated, I don't see a reason why you will meet a politician on a voting day and take 2,000 naira and vote against your conscience. If you say you are educated, like what they did in the House of Assembly in Edo State, when the National Assembly passed a bill for local government autonomy, guess what? Those who we asked to go and represent us voted against local government autonomy. Where are they from? Are they from the moon? They are from a local government. Are they not? They all represent a local government, the 18 local governments. They all come from various constituencies. They voted against local government autonomy. What does that portend? What it portends is that the revenue that should have been coming directly to the local government goes first to the state government before the governor or those in the executive now determines what comes to the local government. But if a local government chairman, because in terms of appropriation, there's what goes to the federal, what goes to the states, and what comes to the local government. How many people know the percentage that comes to the local government? I think the local government gets about 20-something%, while the state gets about 26%. So if you look at the variance, very, very meager. If a local government chairman has such a budget, he will be able to embark on projects in his local government, roads, healthcare, and all of that. Because the local government is the tier that is very closest to the people. But because they did their voodoo politics, they voted against, they enslaved their own people, that you will not have that autonomy. Even their own financial autonomy, if not for the fact that other states, they had to third majority, they also voted against their own financial autonomy. Then you now ask yourself, these people, are they educated? Because if peradventure, you are the federal, the executive, he is in the legislator, in the federal, and you say, do you want autonomy? I'm representing people. I will say, no, I don't want it. I've sold myself.
So some say it's easier to say these things when you're outside and you're not inside. Yeah, it's easier because that's what happens. People say things when they are yet to get into position of authority, and then they get there, they get swallowed up within the context of Nigeria. That happens every now and then.
Let me tell you something.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. I worked in the banking industry for 15 years. There's no way on earth you have a ghost worker in the bank. Why?
You tell me.
By the time you come into the office, there's a register. You sign in. When you're leaving, you sign out. They take head counts. But in the ministry, what happens?
So this is a systemic problem.
Our institutions are very weak. You look at the police, you look at the customs, the health sector, guess what? You take taxpayers' money, you build a hospital, specialist hospital. The president comes to commission it. 3 years, not functional. You've tied resources down. If they knew they were not going to commission, if they knew they were not going to make that hospital function, why tie that resources down? Nobody's asking. Nobody in the House of Assembly is asking questions. You see human rights activists demonstrating every day. What is the House of Assembly? What is their function?
Okay, we'll get to that point. Let's not digress. Dr. Adrian, yeah.
I think I think I agree with you when you said it's easier said than done. But most of our leaders can make a difference. And there are those that want to lead, that want to get into office to make a difference, that are not given a chance. Because if they can't buy their way through the system, they can't get through. And that glass ceiling needs to be broken. And you can't break it until you educate what is said, educate the people.
Okay.
They need to be educated. And I was watching the National House of Assembly. Most of these guys get elected. When they get into office, they hardly do anything. Some of them take a nap while legislation is going on. It's these are the guys that are elected to represent their constituencies that go into office and do nothing. We need people that will go in there and make a difference, that will propose legislation, that will help take this country forward. That is what is lacking in this country. We are having leaders that just don't do anything. Like the president, for example, I hate to say it again, I don't want to mention names. In the 2+ years he's been in office, he spent about a third of that in hospitals in London. I know people get sick and all of that.
Oh, sure, because you're a human being.
People get sick.
People get
but
sick.
I will tell you what
I'm sure even in America that you always make reference to, there are several presidents in America who were sick.
But I will tell you what David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of England, of Britain, said recently. It was at Buckingham Palace with the Queen, and an open microphone was there, and he didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
He was making comments about this, and that was when Buhari was in London. He was saying that they come here, they can't even manage their own country. He said, this is the perception that they create out there. When you start globetrotting, going from country to country and not paying attention to your internal issues, you are making yourself a laughing stock. We need leaders that will lead, leaders that have the conscience, that will nurture the conscience, that will want to think about people when they're in office, that will go there to create impression, to create legacies. Okay. We don't want leaders that just want to build mansions, use money earmarked for their constituencies or for their subdivisions or for their local governments to build mansions and buy and sell private jets. We need leaders that will think of this country first. Like John F. Kennedy said, let's think of what your country can do. Let's think of what you can do for your country and not what your country can do for you. That mindset needs to be in the minds of all leaders. Okay. They need to think of the country first. That's what is lacking in this country. Nobody's thinking of Nigeria first. Nigeria should be in the forefront of every leader's mind. That is lacking. Look at roads, look at schools, they're all dilapidated. That's why the private sector is taking over, because we are not helping to grow this economy the way it should be growing. I will quickly tell you something on that. Yeah. Look at we are living more than 120% of our gross domestic product. I know you will say Japan is living off is over 160% of its gross domestic product. Yeah. We are living more than we are making because we are squandering our wealth. It shouldn't be the case. We can't compare ourselves like with Japan or Greece that is just coming out of its critical recession. Yeah. Because Japan is a wealthy country. They can find a way to overcome that because they are manufacturing stuff. They are manufacturing vehicles. We are not really doing anything tangible here in this country. That although we're having this huge, we are living beyond our means here. We need to trim it down. We need to cut down there. I was in America. I was in Houston the other day. I ran into a Nigerian. He came to the United States to buy furniture for his home here in America when we have good furniture makers here in Nigeria. That is backward and primitive. How do you travel over 5,000 miles to go buy furniture here when you have good furniture makers here in Nigeria? That's what I'm talking about. You don't you are creating that extravagance. Let
me proceed, Dr. Davidson.
Yes.
You mentioned severally the need to look at the process of emergence of leadership in Nigeria, but I also want to add to that mentorship in leadership development in this country. Let's start with process of emergence. What's your take on it?
The process is a very funny process. There are lots of criteria. If I must be honest with you, if we need to break it down and speak the truth, they don't look at those that have the capacity. They don't look at those that have the intelligence to be able to kind of like galvanize those institutions. What they pay attention to in the political parties is who has money, even if he's a criminal. If Shekarau was contesting for an election in Nigeria, a political party would support him.
Shekau?
Yes,
Shekau.
Not
Shekarau.
Shekau, the Boko Haram. If he brings out money, people will see me and say, you see people jubilating. It has gotten that bad. Then the next thing they'll tell you, do you belong to a society? Do you belong to this society? If you're not in this society. So basically the process. Then secondly.
So there's an erosion of values.
Yes, we don't have values. Those values, growing up, when you see a teacher, even if he's using his white Superb bicycle, you respect him. You see a doctor, you see a banker. They've thrown those things away. They'll say, they'll use, sorry to say, my person, my brother. If you you don't put square pegs in round holes. You put round pegs in round holes. If I'm not in broadcasting, you've been a broadcaster, you have all the experience, you've gone through the ropes, then you now call me Dehe Ebonwoye, who has worked in the banking industry for years, and now say come and head this organization. You'll be the perfect person to head this organization because you know the rudiments. But because they have vested interest, which is most times negative, all other things is pushed aside. He must be the one that is there. You can see what is happening in the primaries. Why are those things happening in the primaries? Why are they fighting themselves? Because you have an anointed candidate. Let's come down to the issues now. You see the main dominant political party. Go and look at Zidane Sanusi, a very sound mind, a human being, the Sultan of the Emir of Kano. He said he was giving a lecture in this Nile University. I read the statement he made. He said Nigerians should focus on who they elect. They should elect people that are educated. What was he talking about? Today you hear the president telling you my certificate is
that issue about certificate. I mean, we've also heard some
article
retired generals. Hold on. Just hold on. We heard, because I've also followed up on that story. Some retired generals, I mean, confirming that their certificates is with the board of the Nigerian army. So I mean I think that settles that. And besides, this issue was there in 2015.
Let me tell you something.
And we went to the Supreme Court. It was quite so. Let that just be. Yeah.
Sonny,
yeah.
When you want to go for an elected position, for Christ's sake,
yes,
there are certain things that is expected of a leader. You have to be transparent. I contested primaries under the APC for already local government as chairman. All my credentials, my primary school, Agbado Primary School, Edo College, University of Benin, my degree, I studied agric economics. The places where I've worked, the APC, they have it in their secretariat.
And I agree.
It's not hidden.
Okay.
It's not hidden. Why this hula baloo is with this? If you want, when I misplaced my WAEC, one of my results that I wrote, it's in their archive. You pay a particular amount and they'll print it out for you. You request for it. So why all these shenanigans that we're having? Article submitted diploma in law. So we don't have people that have gone.
But
you see, there's a way education.
The Constitution. Does the Constitution violates that? No, or did they violate the Constitution?
It does not.
So
it does not.
So,
do they have the do they have the capacity? If our president, sorry to say,
yes,
is educated, he would know what it takes to constitute.
Of course, he's educated. You know, education. Hold on, just hold on. Let's put these things in proper perspective so that we carry our audience along. The bottom line is this: education comes in different form.
Yes.
Someone who rose through the ranks in the army and became a general, you can't say such a person is not educated.
Let me tell you why.
No. You can't say such a person is not educated. You can't say that. Because he attended military schools, he went through all of these different categorization, both at home and abroad. You can't say such a person is not educated. Let's establish that.
Can I come here?
Just hold on. Let me talk to you.
When I talk about education,
yes,
education comes in different forms. First and foremost, one, if I was president, before I become president, I know there's a date I was sworn in as president, May 29th or so.
Yes,
I would have set up my cabinet. Why? Because it also affects the economy of this country. Because one, the capital market also drives the economy. And you also have investors coming in from where? Abroad, coming to invest in this economy. Guess what? How much has been pulled out of the economy? Because one, they need to work. What are your blueprints? What are the ministers you're going to bring in? 6 months, you didn't bring in ministers. 2 months down the line, they were screening ministers. 8 months, close to a year. Who will take you seriously? I'll pull out my funds and take it somewhere else to Kenya or Tanzania, where they have their policies and fixing people to implement their policies. That you say such a person is educated?
Okay. Let me pause you there. I'll come back to you, Dr. Adrian. Is education, like we're presenting it, a prerequisite to being successful as a leader? I mean, if we go back to history, even from our history here, is replete with stories of people who probably never saw the four walls of an institution, but they led well. They were kings, they were queens who displayed leadership qualities that took their communities or their society out of the woods, where they led wars to protect their territorial integrity. So I don't know what your thoughts are along those lines.
Well, it is not a prerequisite, but it helps. I would say it helps. The current Prime Minister of India, Modi, his education background is kind of minimal, and he's doing well. When the currency was so bad, what did he do? He got rid of the currencies and rebranded the currency. So they did that in India last year when they redid the currency, just like Naira. They destroyed everything and started everything. And it didn't take education for him to do that, but he had that education from growing up in the party hierarchy. Now, even in Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela, is with a big currency that is using to try to revamp the Venezuelan economy. You can see that happening. He has, Hugo Chavez brought him up with very little education, and is trying to, to agree with you, his lack of education, or his lack of knowledge about governance had helped worsen Venezuela's economy to where a country that was once one of the most prosperous in South America has become the poorest in South America, if not in the world.
But those who will say the forces against him are also contributing to that. But particularly, he's always been at loggerheads with the U.S., criticizing the U.S. and all of that. Yeah.
Before the U.S. got
And there have been several sanctions against Venezuela from the U.S. specifically.
But before the sanctions came in,
yes,
the sanctions are not because of his poor, education. It's because of his, of the suppression of Venezuelans who oppose his administration. That's why, because of his extrajudicial killing, that's why the U.S. imposed those sanctions, just trying to stop him from becoming a global dictator. But in real sense, the reason why he's doing that, like in neighboring Cuba, what Venezuela is doing, I'm just going to use that as a really quick example, is practically giving oil to neighboring countries and to its citizens at next to nothing. And that's your means of income, means of productivity. Why are you not making profit? Venezuela was once one of the highest oil producers in the world, and look at what has happened. Now, coming back here, how has education, in terms of Buhari's, he grew up in the military hierarchy, but does he have any experience in governance? No, hardly any, because we saw how his military junta and what happened, why the military took over, because things were not going well. But
from that time onward, has the country fared better? Well, the country has not fared better. So it shows to you that this whole stuff about education is not really a factor, like you admitted a while ago. But I want us to stay on course. Let's stay on course, yes, on the focus of our discussion.
Okay.
Re-engineering Nigeria's development, looking at it from the perspectives of policy initiative and system of government. Then you also talked about the process of emergence of leaders, which actually brought us to the issue of education or no education, like you're trying to make reference to the president. Let's look at setting agenda for the electorate.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a re-engineering our own
development.
Economy, development. You see, it is hard to discuss that topic without citing other countries that have done so well.
Yeah.
And so how do we do this? The way we do this, again, starts with the leadership. And how do we start with the leadership? We start with those that can potentially be leaders. And you create an environment that paves way for those potential leaders to be vetted and given the opportunity to become leaders, allowing the same, what Wole Soyinka call wasted generation type, to continue to rule this country. I'm just quoting Wole Soyinka. He once called the same group of guys that continue to come to power over time as wasted generation, allowing them to continue to determine the fate of Nigeria. The destiny of Nigeria should stop. We need to give the newcomers, the opportunity to rule. That's the only way to regenerate this country. Look at what Nelson Mandela did when he ruled when he came to office in 1994. He told South Africans, I'm not going to rule for one term, and I will allow others to rule, because that's the way it should be. African leaders don't do that, but he's the only one to have done that, because he knew the country needed new ideas to move forward, and that's what we need. To re-engineer the new development, we need new ideas, fresh ideas. That's where innovation comes to the equation. We need innovative people, young people. And how do you create those innovative people? By educating them, throwing away our youth into crime and denying them the jobs that they desire because we don't have the resources to create the industries, or because we are wasting the resources that can create the industries, doesn't help anything. So we need new leaders that can create, that can help re-engineer the economy. That's what we need. And we are allowing our leaders of yesterday to continue to buy the votes they need to stay in power. We can't let this happen. We are not trying to create any kind or incite any kind of revolution or anything, but we need the people to be educated to understand that accepting money from leaders or potential leaders so they can stay in power or get into power is not the way to elect leaders. You need to elect leaders when you know who they are, what they plan, what their plans are for you. If they gave you $20,000 to get into office and you don't get to see them again until election time comes, these are not good leaders. They want your money.
What's your take on the impact of mentorship in leadership development in Nigeria?
Well, my take is this. How do you create mentorship? By having people who can understand the process, people who are willing to invest their mindset into the process. And that's, you have to first of all have collective ideas from those who are willing to be mentored. And by so doing, you have a system of mentorship that will sustain the economy and the political system. You just can't, you know, saying it is not enough, but having the parameters to create that avenue is what matters, you know. And how do you do that? It goes back to what we were saying. You need to create the type of people that can be good mentors and that can be mentored, that can be, you know, nurtured, so that they can be viable leaders of tomorrow.
Okay. Idem, a final word from you, but is along the lines of something I said a while ago, which is that what really happened? Is there something? Is there a myth about governance or government that changes people when they get into office, or the people always had this innate character in them? The opportunity of being in leadership has now changed them. I don't know if you get the question.
Of course, I get the question. The truth of the matter is that,
yes,
you know, they said if you can't beat them, there's a slogan like that. If you can't beat them,
you join them.
You join them.
Yeah.
You see, the kind of people we have in governance today are, sorry to say, questionable characters. There are a lot of recalcitrance in the system. I've worked in a structured organization. If you don't come to work, they give you a query. If you don't come, if you continue, they give you suspension. If you continue with that, you get a sack letter. You work in an organization, for Christ's sake. I knew when you started. You've grown along the ranks. That's how every organization is supposed to run. You need to run government like an enterprise. It's not your private, it's not your family business. Even your own family business, you run it to make profit. So why are you now shortchanging the people? Why are you shortchanging the people? There's no need for that. You see, you have a lot of rogues in our system. That is why you see this same process. Today they leave this party, they jump to the other party because this party is in power. Tomorrow they jump to this other party. Do they jump from Nigeria to Ghana like that and get Ghana citizenship, or jump to America? What it portends, we are not looking at the future. What it portends, I like breaking it down to the barest minimum. Those days, we were selling our homes to go abroad. Now, those homes, they've all been sold. No more homes to be sold. Now, our people are taking the risk of going to the Mediterranean Sea, seeing people die every day. As I speak with you, they go en route canoe. Some will go today. Every day. It's not a disgrace that every day we get people coming from Libya. Today, what does that portend? The crime rate has increased. Don't you see on TV? The other day, very close to my house, somebody was stabbed to death because when they asked him, I'm a civil servant, he said, I don't have money. And truly, he doesn't have. And apparently, you find out he has not been paid. The boy took a dagger and stabbed him to death because he couldn't give him 3,000 or 4,000. Those that were able to give them 3,000 or 4,000, they left them. That is what is now trending. Up to the extent people now resort to self-help by providing vigilante. In my area, I've been going around trying to provide vigilante. The government has failed in all ramifications. No, that's a generalistic statement. You can't say the government has failed, because there are other areas where government has also done well. We must balance it. We must balance it. That's the truth. Okay, hold on. Let me talk about specifics.
Yes, we must balance it.
What is the function of government? Government is not supposed to provide jobs.
It's to create the enabling environment. Yes.
And in a situation whereby you live in a society whereby when I'm supposed to be sleeping, I'm outside doing civil defense. What does that portend? My productivity will be reduced. Right? Investor that wants to come in will know that, this place is not safe. People don't sleep with their two eyes closed anymore. They don't sleep with their two eyes closed anymore. They steal cars, they maim people, they steal phones. It's trending. It's not something we shouldn't see, most times
Yeah,
when
but that's not enough for you to say the government has failed. That's the point I wanted to establish. If you look at it sectorally, if you look at this sector, okay, who is government? You're also a part of government.
Yes, we have failed. When you say government,
yes.
you see, most times when we come here, we narrow it down to political parties. Government has to be a lot of institutions: the police, the criminal justice system, the churches, the mosque. What do they preach? What do they say? Those values.
Do you go to this organization to know what they preach? If they don't preach, they preach. They do.
Sonny.
Yes, they do. But
Sonny,
let's pause.
I was a politician. I was a politician a few days ago.
Yes.
If I tell you my experience.
Anyway, let me get a final thought from Dr. Davison. Yeah.
This is what I think. The government may have failed, but we, the people, have also failed ourselves. I'll tell you how we failed ourselves. The way we have failed ourselves is by not trying to organize ourselves, by not trying to re-engineer ourselves, re-engineer development. In the U.S., what we do there, we have associations. Every neighborhood has its own association, and that's every homeowner in that neighborhood has a yearly fee that he or she pays to the association, and that money is used to maintain roads, lights, and to maintain the areas. Why can't we have that kind of system here, where every neighborhood we have some kind of fee to pay?
Just to develop the area.
Yeah, develop the area. You can develop your revenues. Like now, if you go to most neighborhoods, the roads are very bad. You can't go through. But if you see beautiful homes in every area, but the owners are okay just to drive in those beautiful roads into their compound. Why can't they contribute money together like they do in the United States? Yeah. Those homes that you go to in America that are so beautiful are actually maintained by homeowner association. We can do the same thing here in Nigeria by creating association for every neighborhood, and homeowners in every neighborhood will contribute.
But I think already such things exist, like he mentioned. You have neighborhood watch in your
but that's the watch. That's for security. I'm talking about developing the areas, paving the roads, maintaining the roads, making neighborhoods beautiful. Not building a mansion in the midst of chaos, destruction, roads that are waterlogged and bad.
Okay, then quickly, you're talking about the U.S.
Yes,
we can do it here.
When it's difficult, why it's very difficult to be done here, is because what's the employment rate in the U.S. compared to the employment in Nigeria? What's the per capita income
in the U.S.
of an individual in the U.S. to the per capita income of a Nigerian? But guess what? You see, let's not garnish these things. For me, I like saying things the way they are. The average Nigerian man, the elites are very rich. The gap between the elites and the average Nigerian man is very wide. The average Nigerian man lives in penury.
But if you can afford to build a nice home,
who builds those nice homes?
But individuals, like if I'm not a politician. My house is nice. I have a beautiful home that out there in Etete, but that doesn't make me. I'm a politician. Yes, I'm a politician. Let me correct that impression. But I'm not in office yet. I'm not in office yet. But when I'm in office, then I will become a professional politician. Not one that stays anywhere, but one that is here to help the society. But having said that, if you can afford to have a home there, you can pay as you can afford. You pay what you can afford, and the better your home is, the more you pay.
The more you pay, just to maintain this.
Just to maintain the area.
So where is the government, if you say so?
But the government, even in the U.S., the government is not involved in that process. It's just the homeowner association. It's just the homeowners. They have a yearly fee that they pay. They pay to a management company, and that management company makes sure that the areas are maintained.
Well, I just so we can do that here.
Yes.
You don't have, some guys take over.
You don't have to be rich.
Yes, take over such a system and then use the money to enrich themselves. You get more wives and then buy more cars and do all kinds of stuff. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. Idihan, thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Davison, thanks a lot for coming.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a worthwhile time here talking about Nigeria's process of re-engineering development, looking at the roles that we can play individually and collectively to drive Nigeria in the direction it ought to be. One of the key things that we talked about today is a process of emergence of those in leadership position. The key, as it relates to that, is when you have the right people in position of authority, you can be rest assured that there will be growth, there will be development, there will be peace, there will be security, because they can enunciate the right policies and programs that will affect the average Nigerian. The election is just around the corner. Get your PVC ready and look deep. Move away from the culture of collecting money to cast your vote, because you are indirectly setting your future. The interesting thing is that when we say your future, you probably think that that future is some years ahead, maybe some 20 years, 10 years ahead. Those years, that future is just now, because you're going to drive through bad roads, you go to the market and buy things expensively, and all kinds of things will continue to happen that really will not augur well for this country. Remember, this is our only country. Someone said here this morning, you can cross carpet from party A to party B, but you can't cross carpet from country A to country B. Even if you do that, at some time, you need to come back home. I believe Dr. Davidson has been away from this country for many years, but he's got to come back home to also contribute this quarter, because that's the truth. That's just the way life